There are maps that record mountains. There are maps that record rivers. There are even maps that record the drifting paths of clouds. Yet nowhere in the world is there a map that can fully contain the sleeping giant. The old sailors say this is because the giant is not truly a place. A place remains where it is. A place can be measured. A place can be named. The sleeping giant does none of these things. For although he is not moved in living memory, and although entire kingdoms have been built upon his back, there remains the unsettling truth that the land beneath every road, every temple, and every lantern-lit home is not stone. It breathes, slowly, patiently, as though dreaming, far above the clouds, where ordinary mountains cannot reach and birds rarely dare to fly. The giant rests upon an endless sea of silver mist. His body stretches farther than most travelers will ever see in their lifetimes. Forests grow upon his shoulders. Rivers wind across his arms. Villages cling to hills formed by ancient folds in his sleeping form. To those born upon him, he is simply the world. Children learn to walk upon his back. Farmers cultivate fields upon broad green plains that rise and fall with the rhythm of his distant breathing. Sailors guide cloud ships from harbor to harbor without ever considering that the cliffs beside them are part of a sleeping being older than memory itself. Life continues as it always has. Lanterns are lit at dusk. Tea is poured. Stories are shared. The giant sleeps, and the kingdom above him lives on. Yet tonight is not entirely ordinary, for the elders of every district have begun hanging silver lanterns beside their doors. The observatories upon the crown peaks have remained lit long after sunset, and in the harbor districts built upon the giant's resting hand, travelers speak in quiet voices while watching the clouds below. For according to records older than any living person, the giant is nearing the end of a dream. No one knows what this means. No one knows whether dreams end suddenly or slowly. No one knows whether a giant dreams as people do. Yet every few centuries something changes. The clouds begin to drift differently. The wind grows gentle. The giant exhales. Not a breath as humans understand it. Not a storm. Not a disaster. Simply a single, long breath. And when it happens, entire districts sometimes vanish into the horizon upon floating clouds, beginning journeys that may last generations. Tonight, many believe another such breath may come, perhaps before dawn, perhaps not. The kingdom has waited centuries. A few more hours will make a little difference, and so lanterns glow across the sleeping giant. Bridges shine like threads of gold in the darkness. Cloud ships rest quietly in their harbors, and somewhere beneath it all, far below roads and forests and towns, the giant continues dreaming beneath the stars. The first place most travelers encounter upon arriving at the kingdom is not a palace, nor a temple, nor one of the famous observatories that crown the giant's highest peaks. It is the harbor of the open hand. The harbor stretches across the giant's left palm, where generations of builders have transformed broad plateaus and gentle valleys into one of the busiest districts in the kingdom. From above, the arrangement resembles a constellation. Hundreds of lanterns trace winding roads between warehouses, tea houses, workshops, and cloud docks. Bridges curve gracefully across shallow ravines formed by the giant's sleeping fingers. At night, their reflections shimmer upon rivers of mist drifting far below. Many travelers are surprised when they first learn that ships can sail through clouds. Yet in the kingdom, cloud ships are as ordinary as fishing boats in coastal towns elsewhere in the world. They arrive from distant districts carrying silk, fruit, carved lanterns, books, tea leaves, and stories gathered from every corner of the giant's vast resting form. Some vessels are elegant and narrow, designed for speed. Others are enormous floating barges capable of transporting entire buildings from one district to another. From dawn until long after sunset, the harbor remains alive with movement. Ropes creak, lanterns sway, Dockworkers move carefully along wooden platforms suspended above endless skies. Passengers disembark carrying luggage, gifts, and sometimes entire gardens packed into traveling crates. For many, arrival at the harbor of the open hand marks the beginning of a journey. For others, it marks the end. And for a small number, it marks both. One of the oldest traditions in the harbor concerns visitors arriving before a great exhalation. Whenever the giant's breathing begins to change, travelers gather here from every district. Some come out of curiosity. Some come for celebration. Others come simply because they wish to witness history. No one knows exactly when the breath will come, only that eventually it always does. The uncertainty has become part of the tradition. Tea houses fill with speculation. Observatory reports circulate through markets. Old sailors share stories that grow more dramatic with every retelling. The atmosphere resembles a festival awaiting a guest whose arrival remains uncertain. Tonight the harbor carries that familiar feeling. The docks remain busy. The lanterns remain bright. Yet beneath the ordinary sounds of commerce lies a quiet anticipation. Not excitement, not fear. Something gentler. A feeling that the world itself may soon shift, if only slightly. Near the western edge of the harbor stands a long wooden pier known as Listening Dock. Unlike the larger commercial piers nearby, this one serves no practical purpose. No cargo is loaded there. No cloud ships remain anchored for long. Instead, people gather simply to sit. Rows of benches overlook the sea of clouds stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. Visitors arrive carrying tea, books, instruments, or nothing at all. Some remain for hours. Some remain for days. According to local custom, Listening Dock offers the best place in the kingdom to hear the giant breathe. Of course, no one truly hears breathing. At least not directly. What people hear are subtle changes, a shift in distant winds, a movement of cloud currents, the faint creaking of ancient bridges adjusting themselves by fractions of an inch. These sounds combine into something that feels strangely alive. The experience is difficult to explain. Those who grow up elsewhere often dismiss it as imagination, yet nearly every resident of the kingdom eventually visits Listening Dock. And nearly every visitor leaves convinced that something beneath the world is sleeping. As night deepens, more people arrive. Lantern light paints warm reflections across polished wood. Cloud ships drift silently beyond the harbor. Stars emerge above the kingdom one by one. Far across the horizon, tiny settlements sparkle upon distant parts of the giant's body. Each light represents another district, another community. Another collection of lives unfolding upon the same sleeping land. Looking across the darkness, it becomes almost impossible to comprehend the giant's true size. The nearest districts require hours of travel. The farthest require weeks. Some regions are so distant that many residents spend their entire lives without ever seeing them. Yet all belong to the same kingdom. All rest upon the same giant. And somewhere beyond the lantern-lit harbor, beyond the forests and temples and mountains built upon his sleeping form, the dream continues. Slow, patient, unbroken. For now, beyond the harbor of the open hand, where cloud ships arrive and depart beneath forests of lanterns, the land begins to rise gently toward one of the most beloved regions in the kingdom, the shoulder gardens. Travelers often describe the district as peaceful. Residents usually laugh when they hear this. Not because the description is wrong, but because peace is difficult to notice when one lives inside it every day. The gardens spread across the giant's broad shoulders, where generations of gardeners, farmers, and architects have transformed rolling hills into a landscape of terraces, winding paths, and flowering groves. From a distance, the district resembles a patchwork quilt draped across green mountains. Stone stairways climb through orchards. Small bridges cross streams fed by mountain springs. Lantern-lit pathways weave through bamboo groves and flowering trees. Every season brings new colors, new scents, new sounds. Yet perhaps the most remarkable feature of the shoulder gardens is not the scenery itself. It is the view. Almost every road eventually reaches an overlook, and from nearly every overlook, the kingdom stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Cloud oceans drift far below. Distant lantern cities glow across the giant's body. Bridges span impossible distances between settlements. And at night, the entire kingdom appears suspended between stars above and clouds below. Many visitors arrive intending to spend only a few hours. Most remain far longer. Some never leave. There is an old saying among gardeners of the district. It claims that the giant dreams in flowers. No one remembers who first spoke those words. Like many traditions within the kingdom, the saying simply appeared one day and remained. The idea itself is simple. Every year certain flowers bloom only upon the giant's shoulders. These flowers grow nowhere else. The petals resemble pale lantern light. Their fragrance drifts surprisingly far upon the wind, and most curiously, they tend to bloom shortly before an exhalation. No scholar has ever successfully explained why. Botanists have proposed dozens of theories. Astronomers blame seasonal cycles. Historians claim coincidence. Yet every major exhalation recorded in the archives was preceded by fields of pale blossoms spreading across the shoulder gardens. Tonight the hills are covered with them. Thousands upon thousands of flowers sway gently beneath moonlight. Their pale petals transform entire valleys into rivers of silver. Gardeners carrying lanterns move carefully along narrow paths between terraces. Some gather blossoms for ceremonies. Others simply walk among them. The tradition has become part observation and part celebration. Children run through the fields collecting fallen petals. Tea houses decorate their entrances with fresh arrangements. Musicians perform beside lantern-lit pavilions overlooking the clouds. No one treats the approaching exhalation as a disaster. That is perhaps what surprises outsiders most. Elsewhere, stories about sleeping giants usually end badly. There are warnings, prophecies, ancient curses. The kingdom possesses none of these. The giant has always slept. The giant has always breathed. And life has always continued. To residents, the approaching breath is simply another chapter in a cycle older than memory. Yet beneath the calm traditions, small signs of preparation can be seen everywhere. Certain bridges are being reinforced. Cloud ships remain fully supplied. Travelers exchange updated maps showing recent cloud currents. Storekeepers quietly secure loose decorations. Not because anyone expects catastrophe, because experience teaches respect. The kingdom has learned over centuries that even gentle changes can reshape entire districts. Near the highest terrace of the shoulder garden stands a pavilion known as Windwich Hall. The building itself is unremarkable. Simple wooden beams, curved roofs, open walls facing the horizon. Yet the pavilion attracts visitors from every corner of the kingdom. People come here not for architecture, they come for the wind. The currents moving across the giant's shoulders often arrive long before reaching lower districts. As a result, Windwich Hall serves as one of the kingdom's oldest observation points. Generations of caretakers have recorded wind patterns there. Shelves overflow with journals describing storms, cloud migrations, unusual weather, and previous exhalations. Some records are so old that the ink has faded almost completely. Others were written only weeks ago. Together they form one of the largest continuous histories in the kingdom. This evening the hall remains unusually busy. Observers sit quietly beside open windows. Pages turn softly. Lanterns glow beside stacks of weathered journals. Outside, clouds drift endlessly beneath moonlight. Now and then someone steps onto the terrace to study the horizon, not searching for danger, simply watching, waiting. The atmosphere resembles that moment before sunrise when the world feels suspended between night and morning. Nothing has happened, yet something feels close, not visible, not measurable, only sensed. And across the shoulder gardens, As silver flowers sway beneath the stars and lanterns glow among quiet terraces, many residents share the same feeling. The giant is still asleep. The kingdom remains unchanged. Yet somewhere beneath forests, rivers, towns, and gardens, a dream that has lasted centuries may slowly be nearing its end. Far from the harbor districts and the flowering terraces of the shoulder gardens lies a region many travelers consider the true heart of the kingdom, the ribbed terraces. Reaching them requires several days of travel along lantern roads that cross forests, valleys, and cloud bridges suspended above endless skies. Most visitors arrive expecting another beautiful district. What they discover instead is something altogether different. For unlike the gentle hills of the giant's shoulders or the broad plains of his back, the ribbed terraces possess a geography unlike anywhere else in the kingdom. Massive ridges rise from the landscape at regular intervals. Some stretch for miles. Others disappear into distant forests. Entire cities have been built between them. Roads curve around them. Bridges cross them. Generations have shaped their lives around these enormous formations. No one remembers who first recognized what they truly were. Yet eventually someone noticed the pattern, and once seen, it could never be unseen. The ridges were ribs, not bones exposed to the air, not skeletal remains. The giant's body remained covered by earth, grass, forests, and stone. Yet beneath the landscape, the shape of his sleeping form revealed itself through the contours of the land. And nowhere was this more visible than the ribbed terraces. From high observation towers, travelers can see the ridges stretching toward the horizon in graceful parallel lines. The sight is strangely beautiful and faintly unsettling, for it serves as a reminder that the kingdom does not rest upon ordinary ground. The land itself belongs to something living, something sleeping, something unimaginably vast. Yet life continues as it always has. Markets operate between the ridges. Farmers cultivate fertile valleys. Children play beside streams winding through ancient stone settlements. The extraordinary becomes ordinary surprisingly quickly, especially when entire generations grow up surrounded by it. One of the oldest cities in the kingdom stands within the ribbed terraces. Its name is Kisaru. Founded so long ago that even historians disagree about its age, the city occupies a valley protected between two immense ridges. From a distance, lantern-lit rooftops resemble stars scattered across green earth. Stone stairways climb steep slopes. Bridges connect elevated districts. Small shrines appear at seemingly random corners of the city. The result is a place that feels less designed than discovered, as though builders simply settled wherever the landscape permitted, and perhaps they did. Many structures in Kisaru are older than written records. Some foundations date back so far that their original purpose remains unknown. Residents tell stories about hidden chambers beneath the city, forgotten roads, ancient observation halls. Most likely these stories are exaggerated. Yet every few years workers uncover some new tunnel or buried structure that nobody remembers building. The kingdom is old enough that forgotten history often becomes part of everyday life. Visitors frequently notice another unusual feature of Kisaru. Nearly every building contains wind chimes, thousands of them. Large chimes, small chimes, bronze chimes, glass chimes, bamboo chimes. They hang from rooftops, bridges, balconies, and garden gates. During calm weather they remain silent. Yet when the wind arrives, the entire city begins to sing. No two districts sound alike. Different materials create different tones. Different builders favor different designs. As a result, entire neighborhoods develop unique voices carried across the terraces by shifting currents. The tradition began centuries ago during a previous exhalation, at least according to local stories. The exact details vary depending on who tells them, but every version shares one common element. The wind changed, and the city listened. Since then, the people of Kisaru have maintained the custom. not because they expect the chimes to predict the future, simply because they enjoy hearing the kingdom breathe. Tonight, the sounds drift softly across the valleys. Gentle notes rise and fall upon moonlit air. Lanterns glow from thousands of windows. Key houses remain open later than usual. Travelers gather in courtyards sharing stories from distant districts. The approaching exhalation has become the subject of nearly every conversation, not because anyone possesses new information, because uncertainty naturally attracts stories. Some claim the next breath will be stronger than any recorded before. Others insist it will be barely noticeable. Some believe entire cloud islands will form. Others expect nothing unusual at all. The truth is that no one knows, and perhaps that uncertainty forms part of the kingdom's fascination. In a world where nearly every road, bridge, and settlement has been carefully mapped, the giant remains unknowable. People understand where they live. They understand how their cities function. They understand the changing seasons, yet the being beneath it all remains a mystery. No one knows why he sleeps. No one knows what he dreams. No one knows how long his dreams last. And perhaps most importantly, no one knows whether the giant is aware of the kingdom at all. The question surfaces often in the ribbed terraces, especially among travelers. What would it mean for an entire civilization to exist upon someone else's dream? The philosophers of Kisaru have debated this question for generations. Entire libraries have been filled with possible answers. Some argue the giant must know. Others insist he cannot. A few believe the question itself is impossible to answer. Most residents simply continue with their lives. The giant sleeps. The kingdom endures. And beyond the lantern-lit valleys of the ribbed terraces, clouds continue drifting beneath moonlight as they have for centuries. Yet as the night deepens, a subtle change begins to spread through the district. Not dramatic, not alarming. The wind chimes are changing, only slightly. A note here, a different rhythm there. Most visitors would never notice, but those who have lived among the terraces for many years pause occasionally to listen. Then they exchange quiet glances, for the wind sounds different tonight, and somewhere far beneath the roads, lanterns, and sleeping cities of the kingdom, the giant draws another slow breath. If the harbor of the open hand serves as the kingdom's gateway, and the ribbed terraces its heart, then the lantern bridges are undoubtedly its lifelines. No traveler can spend long upon the sleeping giant without eventually crossing one. Some are short enough to traverse in a matter of minutes. Others disappear so far into the clouds that the opposite end seems to belong to another world entirely. Together they connect hundreds of districts scattered across the giant's vast sleeping form. Without them, the kingdom would fracture into isolated settlements. With them, it remains a single living network stretching from horizon to horizon. Most bridges were built gradually across centuries. The oldest began as simple rope walkways suspended between neighboring ridges. As generations passed, these modest paths expanded. Wood replaced rope, stone replaced wood. Lantern towers rose beside roadways. Rest stations appeared. Key houses followed. What began as crossings eventually became destinations in their own right. Today, some lantern bridges support entire communities. Families live upon them. Merchants operate shops upon them. Musicians perform beneath their lanterns. Travelers spend nights there without ever reaching the opposite side. In the kingdom, bridges are not merely ways of moving between places. They are places. One of the most famous examples is the Bridge of 7 Evenings. The bridge stretches between two distant districts separated by an immense sea of clouds. Crossing it takes nearly an entire day on foot. Because of this, settlements gradually formed along its length. Small shelters became inns. Inns became villages. Villages became neighborhoods. Eventually, the bridge itself developed an identity separate from either end. Today, thousands of people live upon it. Many spend their entire lives there. Some residents have never even visited the districts connected by the bridge. For them, the bridge is home. Their world exists above the clouds, suspended between destinations. Visitors often find this difficult to understand, yet after spending time there, the idea begins to make sense. The bridge possesses everything a town requires: markets, gardens, schools, libraries, tea houses, workshops, observatories, even small temples nestled between lantern towers. Life unfolds much as it would elsewhere, only with considerably better views. At night, the bridge transforms into something almost dreamlike. Lanterns illuminate pathways stretching endlessly through darkness. Clouds drift beneath wooden walkways. Stars shine overhead. Travelers moving in opposite directions pass one another quietly beneath golden light. The experience often feels less like walking across a bridge and more like wandering through a floating city suspended between worlds. Many visitors arrive intending to continue their journey immediately. Most remain longer than planned. There is an old custom observed throughout the lantern bridges. Whenever travelers pass one another at night, they exchange stories, not names, not occupations. Stories. The tradition emerged centuries ago when journeys between districts often required weeks of travel. People naturally shared news to pass the time. Over generations, the practice evolved into something more meaningful. Today, travelers exchange observations, memories, local legends, weather reports, and personal experiences. Entire friendships have begun upon lantern-lit walkways. Entire romances. Entire careers. The bridges serve not only as roads but as pathways through the kingdom's collective memory. Every traveler carries stories from elsewhere. Every traveler leaves carrying new ones. Tonight the bridges seem especially alive. More travelers are moving between districts than usual. Cloud ships continue arriving from distant regions. Tea houses remain crowded despite the late hour. Lantern keepers work steadily along elevated pathways, ensuring every light remains bright. No official festival has been declared. No government announcement has been issued. Yet somehow everyone senses the same thing. Something approaches. Not danger. Change. The difference matters. Change can be welcomed. Change can be celebrated. Change can even become beautiful. Among the countless bridges crossing the kingdom, one particular structure holds special significance during periods preceding an exhalation. The Bridge of Returning Lanterns. The bridge crosses a deep valley near the center of the giant's back. At first glance it appears unremarkable, elegant, well-maintained, pleasantly illuminated. Yet every exhalation leaves its mark there. According to local tradition, lanterns released during previous breaths eventually return, not immediately, sometimes decades later, sometimes centuries. They drift through distant cloud currents before finding their way home. No one knows whether the stories are literally true, yet residents claim that unfamiliar lanterns occasionally appear beside the bridge after unusual weather. Old lanterns, weathered lanterns, lanterns bearing symbols from districts long vanished. Most scholars remain skeptical. Residents remain unconcerned by scholarly skepticism. The stories persist regardless. And tonight dozens of visitors gather beside the bridge hoping to witness something unusual. Not because they expect miracles, simply because the kingdom has always rewarded patience. Many of its wonders reveal themselves only to those willing to wait. Hours pass. The night deepens. Clouds move slowly beneath the bridge. Conversations soften. Lantern light reflects upon drifting mist. Far away, wind chimes from the ribbed terraces occasionally reach the valley as faint musical echoes. Then something happens, so subtle that many fail to notice at first. The clouds below begin moving in a slightly different direction. Not faster, not slower, different. The change lasts only a moment, then another. Nearby lantern flames tremble gently. A few travelers glance toward the horizon. The movement stops. Everything returns to normal. Conversations resume. Tea is poured. The night continues. Yet those who witness the moment remain thoughtful. For the kingdom possesses many traditions, many stories, many legends, and among the oldest is a simple observation repeated across countless generations. Before every great exhalation, the bridge is noticed first, not through words, not through warnings, but through the language of wind, lantern light, and drifting clouds. And tonight, for the first time in centuries, the bridges appeared to be listening. The highest point in the kingdom is not a mountain, nor is it a tower, nor even one of the great observatories built by generations of astronomers. The highest point in the kingdom is the giant's crown. Few people call it that directly. Most simply refer to the region as the Crown Peaks. The name appears on maps. The name appears in official records. The name appears in travel guides. Yet everyone understands what it truly means. The peaks rise from the giant's head, far above forests, cities, rivers, and cloud harbors, far above the drifting cloud seas, far above nearly every district in the kingdom. A journey that takes several days even under ideal conditions. Travelers must cross multiple bridge systems, climb long stone stairways, and navigate mountain roads carved into ancient cliffs. The higher one travels, the thinner the air becomes, the quieter the world becomes. Eventually even the busiest roads disappear. Only scattered lanterns remain. Then those vanish too, and beyond them lie the crown peaks. At first glance, the region appears almost untouched. Vast alpine forests cover rolling slopes. Clear rivers descend from hidden springs. Ancient stone pathways wind through valleys filled with wildflowers. Unlike the crowded districts below, the crown peaks feel spacious, almost lonely. Yet this loneliness is not unpleasant. It resembles the silence of a library or a temple. A silence filled with purpose. The people who live here are not merchants, nor farmers, nor sailors. Most are observers, astronomers, historians, cartographers, weatherkeepers, archivists. Their work concerns the sky, and in a kingdom suspended above the clouds, the sky contains an endless amount of work. The largest structure in the region is known as Starwich Hall. The building occupies an elevated plateau overlooking nearly the entire kingdom. Its lantern towers can be seen from astonishing distances. On exceptionally clear nights, sailors navigating cloud currents far below use the hall as a landmark. The structure itself has expanded continuously for centuries. Each generation adds another wing, another library, another observatory dome, another archive. The result resembles a small city dedicated entirely to observation. Within its halls, records stretch back farther than almost anywhere else in the kingdom. Generations of scholars have documented stars, cloud movements, weather cycles, exhalations, unusual dreams reported by travelers, rare flowers, migration patterns, anything believed worth remembering. Many records contain information so specific that outsiders often find them amusing. Entire shelves discuss cloud formations observed only once. Several books describe lantern designs no longer produced. One famous volume consists entirely of observations regarding unusual sunsets. The archivists see no problem with this. Their philosophy remains simple. No one knows which details may someday matter. Therefore everything deserves preservation, especially in a kingdom built upon uncertainty. Tonight's Starwich Hall remains brighter than usual. Nearly every observatory window glows. Researchers move quietly between rooms carrying journals and charts. Messengers arrive from distant districts throughout the evening. New observations are added to existing records. Old predictions are revisited. No one claims certainty, but everyone senses significance. For centuries the crown peaks have served as the kingdom's eyes, and tonight those eyes remain fixed upon the horizon. One particular observatory stands higher than all the others, the Lantern Dome. Unlike most towers in the kingdom, the Lantern Dome contains no decorative lanterns. The name comes from its appearance.
At night, the observatory glows like a single enormous lantern suspended above the world. Inside, astronomers monitor both the heavens above and the cloud oceans below.
The arrangement may seem unusual, yet the two are deeply connected.
Cloud currents often respond to subtle atmospheric changes long before those changes become visible elsewhere.
By studying both sky and clouds simultaneously, observers gain insight into patterns hidden from ordinary travelers. For several weeks, unusual reports have been arriving.
Nothing dramatic.
Nothing alarming.
Tiny observations.
Minor deviations. A cloud current arriving earlier than expected. A wind pattern lingering longer than usual. A star remaining visible through atmospheric conditions that should have obscured it. Individually, these details mean little. Together they form a pattern, or perhaps the suggestion of a pattern. The distinction remains important. Scientists are careful people, especially those who spend their lives surrounded by uncertainty.
Outside the observatory, visitors gather along elevated terraces overlooking the kingdom.
The view from the crown peaks is unlike anything else in the world. Entire districts appear as tiny clusters of lantern light. Bridges become glowing threads. Cloud ships resemble drifting sparks. The giant's immense sleeping form stretches beyond the limits of sight. Only here can one truly appreciate his scale. From lower districts, the giant feels like land. From the crown peaks, he feels like a world. Many travelers experience a strange sensation upon seeing a view for the first time.
A feeling difficult to describe.
Part wonder.
Part humility.
Part disbelief. The realization arrives gradually. Every city, every road, every story, every life, all resting upon the same sleeping being. The kingdom suddenly seems both enormous and fragile, a vast civilization balanced upon a dream. As midnight approaches, the terraces remain crowded. Tea is served from portable lantern carts. Musicians perform quiet melodies beneath the stars. Travelers exchange stories gathered from distant districts.
The atmosphere feels peaceful.
Yet beneath the calm, attention remains fixed upon the horizon. Everyone is waiting, not for a specific event, not for a signal, for understanding. The desire to understand seems universal throughout the kingdom. People wish to know what approaches. They wish to know what the giant dreams. They wish to know whether the coming breath will resemble those described in ancient records.
Yet answers remain elusive.
The sky offers none. The stars remain silent. The giant continues sleeping, and somewhere beneath forests, rivers, bridges, harbors, gardens, and mountains, another slow breath rises and falls beneath the world,
unseen, unheard,
but perhaps not unnoticed. Beyond the observatories and lantern towers of the crown peaks lies a place many travelers never visit. Not because the journey is difficult, not because the roads are dangerous, but because most visitors become distracted long before reaching it. The views are too beautiful, the observatories too fascinating, the tea houses too comfortable,
and so countless travelers unknowingly pass within a few miles of one of the oldest districts in the kingdom, the Face Cliffs.
The region takes its name from a simple fact. It overlooks the giant's sleeping face. Of all the places within the kingdom, none inspires stronger feelings. Some visitors find the experience peaceful, others find it unsettling. Many feel both at the same time, for no matter how often one is reminded that the kingdom rests upon a sleeping giant, the truth rarely feels real until standing upon the Face Cliffs. Only then does the scale become impossible to ignore. The cliffs rise along the edge of a vast plateau. Beyond them, the land falls away into cloud-filled depths. Across the distance, partially obscured by forests, valleys, and drifting mist, the giant's face rests beneath the stars.
At first the features appear indistinct,
merely another arrangement of hills and ridges. Then the eye begins recognizing patterns.
The gentle curve of a closed eyelid,
the shape of a cheek beneath rolling grasslands, the outline of a sleeping brow stretching toward the horizon. Once noticed, the illusion vanishes, or perhaps the illusion begins. Either way, the giant becomes impossible to unsee. Many first-time visitors remain silent for several minutes, not because they are frightened, because the mind requires time to adjust. Humans understand mountains. Humans understand valleys. Humans understand landscapes. A sleeping face large enough to support entire civilizations belongs to a different category altogether.
The face cliffs contain surprisingly few permanent settlements.
Most people prefer living elsewhere.
The region attracts pilgrims, artists, astronomers, and travelers far more often than ordinary residents. As a result, the district possesses a quiet atmosphere unlike anywhere else in the kingdom.
Stone pathways wind between lantern-lit temples. Small gardens occupy cliffside terraces. Tea pavilions overlook endless cloud seas. Visitors speak softly, not because rules demand it, because the landscape encourages it.
Even laughter seems gentler here. The oldest structure in the district is known simply as the First Lantern Temple.
No one knows who built it. No one knows exactly how old it is. Records mention the temple long before most existing cities were founded. By kingdom standards, that makes it ancient beyond measure. The temple itself remains remarkably simple: weathered stone steps, wooden halls, lanterns suspended beneath curved roofs. Nothing extravagant, nothing grand. Yet generations of travelers have visited, some seeking wisdom, some seeking inspiration, some merely curious. The temple's most famous feature lies behind the main hall.
A narrow pathway leads toward a secluded overlook known as Dreamer's Edge.
The overlook faces directly toward the giant's sleeping eye. There are no shrines there, no statues, no ceremonial decorations, only a wooden platform extending toward the horizon. Visitors sit quietly for hours watching clouds drift across the landscape. The custom began centuries ago.
No one remembers why.
Like many traditions within the kingdom, it simply became part of life. People arrive,
people sit, people leave.
Nothing more. Yet the practice continues generation after generation.
Some claim the experience changes them.
Others claim nothing happens at all. Most return home uncertain, and perhaps uncertainty is the point. Tonight Dreamer's Edge remains unusually crowded. Lanterns glow softly along the pathway. Travelers wrapped in cloaks sit beside one another overlooking the darkness. Some drink tea,
some read books,
some simply watch. Far below, clouds drift slowly across valleys hidden within shadow. Above, stars scatter across an impossibly clear sky. The giant's sleeping face remains motionless.
At least at first.
For shortly after midnight, something curious occurs. A cloud bank passes across the landscape. Ordinarily, such events attract little attention. Clouds are common. The kingdom exists above an ocean of them. Yet this particular cloud behaves differently. Instead of drifting randomly, it follows a gentle curve across the giant's face. The movement lasts only a few moments. Then the cloud dissolves. Most visitors barely notice. A few do. Among them, quiet conversations begin. Not because anyone believes the giant moved. No one suggests such a thing.
The idea would sound absurd.
Yet many share the same feeling. The landscape appears more alive tonight. More aware.
Not active.
Not awake. Simply present. As though the boundary between land and living thing has become slightly thinner. Farther along the cliffs, lantern keepers continue their nightly duties. Each evening they inspect pathways, replace damaged lanterns, and ensure travelers can navigate safely after dark. The work rarely changes. Tonight feels different. Several lantern keepers later describe the same sensation. The wind seems warmer. The air feels lighter. The clouds move more smoothly.
None of these observations qualifies evidence of anything. yet they become part of the growing collection of small details appearing throughout the kingdom.
Tiny changes.
Subtle changes.
The sort of changes people notice only when paying close attention. And tonight the kingdom is paying attention.
Back at the first Lantern Temple, monks carefully update observation journals maintained for centuries.
Most entries remain mundane.
Weather conditions, visitor numbers, cloud movements. Yet every unusual detail receives equal consideration.
The philosophy remains simple. History rarely announces itself when it begins. Only afterward do people realize which moments mattered. Perhaps tonight will become one of those moments. Perhaps it will not.
The kingdom has experienced many nights filled with anticipation, most passed quietly. Perhaps this one will as well.
Yet as lanterns flicker beside ancient temples and travelers watch clouds drift across the giant's sleeping face, a feeling continues spreading through the district.
Not excitement,
not fear.
Expectation.
The kind that arrives when standing beside a shore moments before a distant tide reaches land. The giant still sleeps. The stars remain unchanged.
The kingdom endures.
Yet somewhere beneath forests, rivers, cities, gardens, observatories, bridges, and temples, a dream older than memory seems to be slowly approaching its final chapter. And before dawn arrives, the people of the kingdom may finally witness the breath they have awaited for centuries. As the night deepens across the kingdom, another tradition quietly begins. Unlike the lanterns ceremonies of the shoulder gardens, unlike the observations conducted within the crown peaks, unlike the gatherings upon the lantern bridges,
this tradition possesses no official name,
no written rules, no designated location, yet it appears before every great exhalation. People begin telling stories, not ordinary stories,
not recent events,
the old stories, the stories inherited from grandparents, who inherited them from their grandparents, who inherited them from generations so distant that their names have vanished from memory.
Throughout the kingdom, tea houses remain open later than usual.
Lantern pavilions fill with listeners. Travelers gather beside cliffside overlooks. Families sit together in quiet courtyards. And everywhere stories begin.
Some describe previous exhalations.
Others describe journeys undertaken by drifting districts.
Some concern cloud ships that disappeared beyond the horizon only to return decades later.
Others concern travelers who spent entire lifetimes exploring settlements carried away by ancient breaths. Whether these tales are entirely true no longer matters. Over centuries they have become woven into the kingdom's identity, part history, part folklore, part memory.
In the harbor of the open hand, listeners crowd around elderly sailors whose faces have been shaped by decades of wind and cloud.
The sailors speak of floating districts seen only once, lantern towns drifting beyond mapped skies, bridges suspended upon wandering islands of mist,
cloud harbors that appeared briefly before vanishing forever.
Some listeners nod knowingly, others remain skeptical, yet everyone listens. Stories have a way of preserving possibilities long after certainty disappears. Far away in the ribbed terraces, musicians perform, beneath strings of lantern light while travelers exchange accounts collected from distant regions. One story concerns a district that supposedly departed during an exhalation 3 centuries ago. According to legend, the settlement spent generations drifting through unknown cloud currents before eventually returning. No one can verify the claim. Records are incomplete.
Maps contradict one another. Yet residents continue telling the story,
not because they know it happened,
because they hope it might have.
The kingdom has always loved stories that leave room for wonder. Near the face cliffs, where visitors continue watching the sleeping giant beneath the stars, conversations take on a different character. The stories told there concern dreams. Not the giant's dreams, human dreams. People describe strange visions experienced before previous exhalations.
recurring symbols,
unusual landscapes,
mysterious cities,
bridges stretching beyond the horizon, lanterns floating through impossible skies. Some believe these dreams are coincidences. Others believe they are messages. A few insist the distinction is unimportant. For centuries, the kingdom has existed between certainty and mystery. Perhaps that is why its people remain so comfortable with unanswered questions. Within the first Lantern Temple, monks preserve hundreds of dream journals donated by travelers over generations. Entire rooms contain nothing else, shelves upon shelves of handwritten accounts. Some entries span dozens of pages. Others consist of only a few sentences.
Most would seem ordinary to outside readers, yet occasionally patterns emerge.
The same image appearing across different centuries. The same location described by people who never met. The same symbols resurfacing again and again. No one knows what these repetitions mean.
Yet the journals remain carefully preserved.
In a kingdom built upon a sleeping giant, unusual things are rarely discarded. Meanwhile, throughout the lantern bridges, the traditional exchange of stories becomes increasingly lively. Travelers moving between districts pause beside lantern towers to share local legends. Children listen wide-eyed.
Merchants delay their journeys.
Even experienced sailors remain unusually willing to linger. No one wishes to miss the night, for regardless of whether the exhalation arrives before dawn, the atmosphere itself has become memorable.
The kingdom feels awake.
Not physically, spiritually, as though every district has turned its attention toward the same invisible horizon. One particularly famous story emerges repeatedly throughout the evening, the tale of the Lantern District. Nearly every region possesses its own version,
yet the central details remain remarkably consistent.
Long ago, during an exhalation now lost to history, an entire district supposedly drifted away upon a floating cloud. The settlement vanished beyond mapped skies.
Years passed, then decades. Eventually, most assumed it had been lost forever.
Yet generations later, during another exhalation, the district returned. The lanterns still burned. The buildings remained intact. The residents had changed, but the district endured. According to some versions of the story, only a few years had passed for those who left. According to others, entire civilizations had risen and fallen elsewhere while the drifting district wandered beyond the horizon. No one knows which version came first. No one knows whether any version is true. Yet listeners rarely concern themselves with such questions.
The story survives because it captures something essential about the kingdom.
The belief that departure does not necessarily mean loss. The belief that journeys may eventually circle back toward home.
The belief that the horizon conceals possibilities rather than endings.
As midnight slowly gives way to the quieter hours before dawn, lanterns continue glowing across every district. He continues pouring. Stories continue spreading from settlement to settlement. And while no dramatic event has yet occurred, something subtle has already changed. The kingdom is no longer waiting alone. For centuries, countless generations have anticipated nights such as this. Tonight, their stories have returned. Their memories have returned.
Their traditions have returned.
The living kingdom now sits beside the kingdom that existed before it, connected through shared stories stretching across hundreds of years. And beneath them all, unchanged and unseen, the giant continues dreaming.
His slow breathing rising and falling beneath forests,
beneath cities, beneath observatories, beneath temples, beneath lantern-lit roads. The dream remains unbroken.
Yet with every passing hour, dawn draws closer, and so does the breath.
There is a particular hour that exists just before dawn, an hour that feels separate from the rest of the night. Most people sleep through it. Those who remain awake often struggle to describe it. The world becomes quieter. The darkness softens. Even time itself seems to move differently. Across the kingdom, that hour has now arrived. The stories continue.
The lanterns still glow.
Yet a gentle stillness begins settling over roads, bridges, temples, gardens, and harbors alike. The anticipation remains, but it has changed. Earlier in the evening people spoke about the coming breath. Now they simply wait for it. The difference is subtle,
yet important.
Questions gradually surrender to patience. Predictions give way to observation.
And throughout the kingdom, countless eyes turn toward the horizon. At the harbor of the open hand, cloud ships remain secured beside lantern-lit docks.
Most crews have postponed departures until morning, not because travel would be dangerous, because no one wishes to be elsewhere tonight. Sailors gather beside small fires, keep brews slowly in iron kettles. The usual noise of commerce has faded. Warehouses stand quiet. Markets sleep beneath rows of lanterns. Even the sea of clouds below appears unusually calm.
Occasionally a current drifts through the harbor, carrying ribbons of silver mist between wooden piers.
Each time conversations pause, people watch,
listen,
then continue waiting. Far above, within the shoulder gardens, the silver flowers continue swaying beneath moonlight. Entire hillsides shimmer softly beneath the stars. Many residents have chosen to spend the night outdoors. Families gather upon terraces overlooking the kingdom.
Blankets cover grassy hills.
Children sleep beside lanterns while adults watch the horizon. No formal ceremony takes place.
None is necessary.
The landscape itself feels ceremonial.
The flowers, the lanterns,
the stars, the endless clouds.
Together they create an atmosphere no architect could design.
The kingdom appears less like a collection of districts and more like a single living thing.
Unified, patient,
awake. Within the ribbed terraces, the wind chimes continue singing, yet their music has changed. The difference remains almost impossible to describe. The notes sound familiar.
The melodies remain gentle.
Still, long-time residents recognize something unusual. The wind is traveling differently through the valleys. Some chimes ring more often, others fall silent.
Certain harmonies emerge unexpectedly before fading once more.
Visitors hear only beautiful music. Locals hear a conversation they cannot quite understand, and so they listen. The kingdom has always listened. Perhaps that is why it survived so long.
Not through force,
not through certainty, through attention. At the bridge of returning lanterns, travelers continue watching the cloud ocean below.
The crowds have grown smaller as the night advances.
Many have returned home. Many have fallen asleep in nearby inns. Those who remain tend to be quiet people.
Observers.
Dreamers. The sort of individuals comfortable spending hours watching clouds. A few lanterns drift beneath the bridge, carried by distant currents. No one knows where they originated. No one attempts to retrieve them. The sight itself is enough. Tiny lights moving through darkness, travelers passing through the night.
Much like the kingdom itself.
At the crown peaks, activity within Starwitch Hall remains steady. Yet even the scholars have begun setting aside their charts.
There is little left to calculate.
The observations have been recorded, the patterns documented,
the theories debated.
Whatever comes next will not emerge from mathematics. It will emerge from experience. And so astronomers join ordinary travelers upon observation terraces.
Archivists step outside.
Weatherkeepers pause their work. Together they stand beneath the stars watching the kingdom below. For all their differences, everyone now shares the same role. Witness. The lantern dome glows above the peaks like a second moon. Its light shines across forests, roads, rivers, and distant settlements. Many travelers use it as a reference point while navigating the night. Tonight it serves another purpose.
A reminder.
The kingdom is watching together, across enormous distances, across hundreds of districts, across landscapes so vast that most residents will never see them all. Yet somehow everyone remains connected, through lanterns, through stories,
through bridges,
through shared anticipation. Near the face cliffs, visitors continue gathering at Dreamer's Edge. The giant's sleeping face remains visible beneath starlight. Clouds drift slowly across distant features.
Nothing moves.
Nothing changes, yet many visitors find themselves unable to leave. There is something deeply calming about simply watching.
The giant has slept for longer than any kingdom remembers.
One more hour changes nothing. One more hour feels precious. Monks from the first Lantern Temple quietly distribute tea among travelers. No speeches are given. No prayers are announced. The atmosphere remains simple,
Human,
people sharing warmth beneath the stars.
waiting together.
And perhaps that simplicity explains why the kingdom has endured. Generations have come and gone. Cities have grown. Bridges have expanded. Districts have drifted away and returned. Yet certain things remain unchanged. Tea shared between strangers. Stories exchanged beside lanterns. Clouds drifting across endless skies. The giant sleeping beneath it all. As the final hours before dawn begin slipping away, an unusual calm settles across the kingdom. Even the wind seems reluctant to disturb the moment. Cloud currents move more slowly. Lantern flames burn steadily. The stars remain brilliant overhead. Every district appears suspended between past and future, between memory and possibility, between night and morning. Then, very gradually, another change begins. At first, it is so subtle that almost nobody notices.
A cloud current shifts direction.
A lantern flame leans briefly toward the east. A wind chime rings where no wind seems present.
Tiny observations,
Almost meaningless, yet they appear everywhere.
harbors, gardens,
Bridges.
temples, observatories.
The changes spread quietly across the kingdom like ripples moving through still water. No alarm follows.
No announcement.
Only awareness. The kind of awareness that travels naturally through crowds. People begin looking toward the horizon more often. Conversations grow shorter. Silences grow longer. The waiting is nearly over.
Not because anyone knows what will happen.
Because everyone can feel the kingdom changing around them. And somewhere beneath roads illuminated by lantern light, beneath forests and mountains and cities and temples, beneath generations of stories and centuries of memory, the sleeping giant draws a deeper breath than before.
Slowly, patiently,
As though the dream itself is beginning to turn. No one can later agree on the exact moment it began.
historians will debate it.
Archivists will compare journals. Observers from different districts will offer different accounts. Some will insist it began at the harbor of the open hand.
Others will point toward the crown peaks.
A few will claim the first signs appeared among the silver flowers of the shoulder gardens. All of them will be correct, and all of them will be wrong.
For the change arrived gradually,
Like dawn itself,
not as a single event.
but as 1,000 tiny moments occurring across the kingdom at once. The first unmistakable sign appears within the clouds, far below the kingdom, beneath bridges and harbors and drifting lanterns. The endless cloud ocean begins moving differently. For centuries, the people of the kingdom have lived above these vast white seas.
They understand their moods, their currents, their seasons. The cloud ocean possesses rhythms just as ordinary oceans do. Sailors study them.
Weather keepers record them. Children learn their patterns in school. Yet tonight those familiar rhythms begin changing. The movement becomes smoother, broader, as though countless currents are slowly aligning toward a common destination. At the harbor of the open hand, sailors notice first. Conversations stop. Eyes drift toward the horizon. Cloud ships gently shift against their moorings, not because of stronger winds, because the air itself seems to be flowing differently. The sensation resembles standing beside a river and suddenly realizing that the water has begun moving in another direction. No one speaks for several moments.
No explanation is necessary.
Everyone understands. Something is happening, far away within the shoulder gardens. The silver flowers respond. Entire hillsides begin swaying together, not violently,
Not dramatically, gracefully.
thousands upon thousands of pale blossoms moving as one beneath the stars. The sight transforms valleys into shimmering rivers of silver.
Gardeners pause their work.
Travelers stop along lantern roads. Children wake from sleep and stare across moonlit terraces. The flowers have always bloomed before an exhalation. Now they seem to be greeting it. Above the ribbed terraces, the wind chimes finally reveal the meaning hidden within their changing songs.
The melodies merge.
Separate notes become a single voice. Valleys that normally produce different harmonies suddenly resonate together. Across entire cities, thousands of chimes ring in quiet unison. The sound drifts through lantern-lit streets and sleeping neighborhoods. Residents emerge from homes and tea houses. Many simply stand listening. No one remembers hearing the chimes speak this way before. The music feels ancient,
Familiar.
as though the kingdom itself remembers something its people have forgotten. At the bridge of returning lanterns, travelers watch cloud currents below form enormous spirals stretching toward the horizon. The patterns appear briefly before dissolving,
Then reforming elsewhere.
The sight resembles invisible hands stirring an ocean.
Lantern keepers exchange quiet glances.
Old sailors smile knowingly. Young travelers stare in wonder.
For the first time all night, anticipation begins giving way to certainty.
The breath is coming. Not tomorrow. Not next week.
Soon. Very soon.
Within Starwich Hall, scholars abandon observation journals entirely. Many records remain unfinished upon desks. Ink dries beside half-written notes.
Charts remain scattered across tables.
The work can wait. No one wishes to experience the moment through reports and measurements. Not this moment. Not after waiting generations. The terraces fill with observers. Astronomers stand beside merchants. Archivists beside travelers. Teachers beside children. The kingdom's eyes now face the horizon together. Above them, stars remain brilliant. Below them, clouds move with growing purpose. And between them rests the giant, still sleeping, still dreaming, yet no longer entirely still. At Dreamer's Edge, overlooking the giant's sleeping face, visitors notice something almost impossible to describe. The landscape appears softer, the shadows gentler. The contours of the giant's features seem more alive than before. No movement occurs.
No eyelid opens. No muscle stirs.
Yet the face somehow peers closer to waking. Not awake.
Closer.
Like a sleeper nearing the end of a dream. The sensation spreads quietly among those gathered there. No one speaks loudly. No one points.
Yet many share the same thought.
The giant feels present. The distinction is difficult to explain. For centuries people have lived upon him.
Yet most experience him as geography, as land, as landscape.
Tonight, for perhaps the first time in generations, the kingdom remembers that the land beneath its feet belongs to a living being, a sleeping being, but living nonetheless. As the hours pass, subtle signs continue multiplying. Clouds gather along unusual paths. Lantern flames lean toward the same direction. Wind currents synchronize across distant districts. Birds alter their routes. Even the rivers flowing through the giant's vast resting form seem calmer than usual. Each change appears insignificant alone. Together they form a pattern impossible to ignore. The kingdom is entering the breath, not the breath itself. The space immediately before it. The moment when an entire world inhales anticipation. Throughout history, countless generations have waited for such moments. Many never witnessed one.
Some spent entire lives preparing for an exhalation that arrived after they were gone.
Yet their descendants continue standing beneath the same stars, watching the same horizon, listening to the same winds.
The kingdom feels larger tonight than ever before.
Not because it has grown,
because everyone is experiencing the same moment together. The harbor sailors, the gardeners,
the bridge keepers,
the monks,
the astronomers, the travelers, the children who have only heard stories.
and the elders who remember the last breath from their earliest childhood.
All waiting beneath lantern light, all watching the clouds, all listening. Then, somewhere beyond sight, beyond mountains and forests and distant districts, a single deep current moves through the cloud ocean. The motion spreads outward,
slowly, silently.
Like a ripple crossing an endless sea. The giant is breathing in, and dawn is not far away. No trumpet announces the breath.
No bell rings across the kingdom.
No messenger arrives bearing news. The moment comes quietly,
as though the world has decided not to disturb itself.
For several heartbeats, nothing seems different.
The lanterns still glow.
The stars remain overhead. The giant continues sleeping, yet everyone feels it. The sensation begins not beneath the feet, but in the air itself, a gentle movement, a slow release, the kind of change one might overlook on any ordinary night. Except there is nothing ordinary about this night. Across the harbor of the open hand, sailors lift their eyes toward the horizon. The cloud ocean below begins to unfold. Currents separate, mist drifts outward. Entire rivers of clouds start moving away from the giant's body in graceful spirals. Not rapidly, not violently.
Beautifully, the movement resembles breath condensing upon cold air, only on a scale vast enough to reshape the sky. The kingdom watches.
No one speaks. Words would only interrupt. Throughout the shoulder gardens, silver flowers bow toward the east. Thousands of terraces shimmer beneath moonlight. Petals detach from blossoms and rise gently into the air.
The sight resembles snowfall moving in reverse.
Entire hillsides release pale clouds of drifting petals. They travel upon unseen currents toward distant horizons. Children reach upward attempting to catch them.
Travelers pause beside lantern roads.
Gardeners smile quietly. For generations the flowers have foretold the breath. Now they are greeting it. The wind chimes of the ribbed terraces sing louder than ever before. Not louder in volume, louder in presence. Entire valleys resonate together. The sound rolls through cities and villages like distant music.
For a brief moment, the kingdom seems united by a single melody.
The chimes speak across enormous distances.
Bridges answer.
Lantern towers answer. Temple bells answer. The world itself appears to join the song. At the bridge of returning lanterns, the clouds below begin rising.
Not upward toward the stars.
Upward toward possibility. Great islands of mist slowly separate from the larger cloud sea.
Some are no larger than houses.
Others stretch across entire valleys. Travelers lean against railings watching the impossible unfold. Ancient stories suddenly feel less ancient.
Less mythical. Less distant.
What previous generations described as happening once more.
Not in books.
Not in legends.
Here. Now.
Beneath the lanterns. Within Starwich Hall, every terrace remains crowded. The scholars who spent their lives recording exhalations now stand quietly beside ordinary travelers.
Many hold journals. Few write.
Some moments deserve observation more than documentation. This is one of them. The cloud ocean has transformed into a living landscape. Currents spiral outward from the giant's sleeping form. Vast pathways of mist emerge where none existed before. Entire regions of cloud glow silver beneath approaching dawn. The sight resembles an enormous flower unfolding across the sky, and at its center lies the giant, still sleeping, still dreaming,
breathing.
At Dreamer's Edge, overlooking the giant's face, visitors witness perhaps the most extraordinary view in the kingdom. Clouds drift across the sleeping features. Moonlight traces the contours of brow, cheek, and closed eyelid.
For a brief moment the giant appears impossibly peaceful.
Not powerful.
Not frightening. Peaceful.
The expression belongs to someone deep within a pleasant dream. Someone entirely unaware of the world resting upon them. And perhaps that realization affects many observers more than the breath itself. For centuries the kingdom has lived upon the giant, built cities upon him, crossed bridges above him, told stories about him.
Yet tonight he asks nothing in return. He simply breathes.
The same way mountains gather snow, the same way rivers reach oceans, the same way stars shine.
Naturally, without intention, without effort, without knowing.
Then the drifting begins. At first it is difficult to notice. A cloud district near the eastern horizon slowly separates from surrounding currents. The movement is almost imperceptible. Minutes pass before anyone becomes certain. Then another district begins moving.
Then another. Not cities, not towns.
Entire pieces of sky. Great floating islands of cloud carrying lanterns, bridges, gardens, and roads. Some contain only a handful of structures. Others support entire neighborhoods.
The kingdom watches as they begin gentle journeys into the distance.
No panic follows.
No confusion.
Only wonder. For every resident understands what they are witnessing. The stories were true. The records were true. The breath has come. And with it, the drifting. Lanterns glow upon moving cloud islands. Tiny points of gold traveling through an ocean of silver. Some drift east.
Others west.
Some disappear toward distant horizons. Some circle slowly above the kingdom itself. Their destinations remain unknown. Perhaps they will return. Perhaps they will not. The uncertainty forms part of their beauty. Along the lantern bridges, travelers watch entire cloud districts passing beneath them. The sight feels dreamlike. Lantern-lit gardens floating through darkness. Tiny temples gliding silently across the sky. Pavilions illuminated by moonlight. Every drifting island appears to carry a story.
A future.
A destination not yet written. Children wave toward them. Adults do the same.
No one expects a response.
The gesture feels appropriate nonetheless. Farewell and greeting at the same time. As the exhalation continues, dawn finally begins touching the horizon. At first, only a faint line of pale blue appears beyond the clouds.
Then silver, then gold.
The stars retreat slowly. Night yields its place, yet the breath continues.
Gentle, patient, unhurried, exactly as the kingdom's oldest stories described.
And throughout it all, the giant remains asleep. The kingdom remains intact. The world does not end. Nothing dramatic occurs, which somehow makes the experience even more beautiful.
For after centuries of anticipation, the great mystery reveals itself not as destruction,
not as awakening, but as movement. A reminder that even the oldest things in existence continue changing. Even dreams continue traveling. Even worlds built upon sleeping giants must occasionally let part of themselves drift toward the horizon. And as dawn spreads across the cloud ocean, lantern-lit districts continue their slow departure beneath a sky becoming brighter with every passing moment. The first sunrise after an exhalation is always different, not because the sun changes, not because the sky becomes unfamiliar, but because the kingdom wakes knowing that something has happened. Something quiet, something vast, something that will be discussed for generations.
Across the harbor of the open hand, the lanterns remain lit long after dawn arrives. Many residents have not slept, neither have the sailors,
nor the travelers, nor the bridge keepers, nor the astronomers. The kingdom has spent the entire night watching,
listening, waiting.
And now, beneath a sky painted gold by morning light, people simply stand and observe what remains. Cloud currents continue drifting beyond the horizon. The breath has passed, yet traces of it linger everywhere. The cloud ocean below appears rearranged. New pathways have emerged. Old routes have vanished. Fresh islands of mist drift through regions where none existed before. The maps of yesterday are already becoming maps of the past.
Not incorrect.
Simply incomplete. Within the shoulder gardens, silver petals continue floating through the air. Many settle upon lantern roofs.
Others collect beside rivers.
Some travel so far that no one follows them. The great flowering will soon end. The blossoms will fade. The terraces will return to their ordinary colors. Yet for years afterward, people will remember how the hills appeared beneath moonlight on the night of the breath.
Children who witnessed it for the first time will tell stories about it. Parents will correct details.
Grandparents will add their own memories. And slowly the event will become part of the kingdom's growing collection of shared history. Within the ribbed terraces, the wind chimes finally begin returning to familiar melodies. The great harmony that united valleys throughout the night fades gradually. Individual voices emerge once more.
Different notes.
Different rhythms. Different songs.
The kingdom is returning to itself.
Yet something has changed.
Not the land.
Not the cities.
The people.
For there is comfort in witnessing a mystery survive observation. Many had waited their entire lives to see the exhalation.
Now they have.
And the giant still sleeps.
The kingdom still stands.
Life continues. Sometimes answers bring disappointment.
This answer brings peace.
At the bridge of returning lanterns, travelers continue watching distant cloud districts drifting through morning light. They are becoming smaller now, tiny shapes against vast skies. Soon they will disappear entirely, yet no sadness accompanies their departure, only curiosity.
Where will they go?
What will they see? Will they return during another exhalation centuries from now? No one knows, and that uncertainty feels strangely beautiful. Not every journey requires a destination. Some journeys simply require a horizon. Throughout Starwitch Hall, archivists finally return to their work. Observation journals fill rapidly. Sketches are completed. Maps are updated. Records are compared. Entire shelves will eventually be dedicated to the single night. Future generations will study them. Future travelers will read them. Future children will listen to stories inspired by them. Yet even the most detailed records will fail to capture one thing.
The feeling.
The feeling of standing beneath the stars while an entire kingdom waited together. The feeling of watching impossible places drift across the sky. The feeling of realizing that the giant beneath the world was not a monster, nor a god, nor a threat. Simply a sleeper, dreaming,
breathing, existing,
and allowing countless lives to unfold upon his resting form. At Dreamer's Edge, overlooking the giant's face, the final visitors prepare to leave. Morning light has softened the landscape. The giant's features appear less mysterious beneath daylight, more distant,
more ordinary.
Yet perhaps that is fitting. Mysteries rarely remain visible forever. Most reveal themselves briefly before returning to silence. A few travelers linger longer than the others,
watching, thinking, remembering.
Eventually they too begin walking home. The kingdom calls them back.
Work awaits.
Families await. Life awaits. The extraordinary night is ending. Ordinary days are returning. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson the kingdom offers.
Wonder does not replace ordinary life.
Wonder lives beside it. The harbor of the open hand will become busy again. The shoulder gardens will bloom again. The lantern bridges will fill with travelers again. The crown peaks will continue observing stars. The face cliffs will continue welcoming dreamers. And the giant will continue sleeping. Years will pass.
Then decades. Then centuries.
New cities will rise. Old districts will fade. Generations will come and go like lanterns carried by wind. Some future child, not yet born, will someday stand beneath a sky filled with drifting clouds and hear stories about this very night. The stories may grow larger with time.
They often do.
The drifting districts may become entire kingdoms. The cloud islands may become legends. The exhalation may become myth. Such things happen naturally. Stories travel just as cloud districts do. Yet hidden beneath every embellishment, one truth will remain. There was once a kingdom built upon a sleeping giant. Its people waded through a long night beneath lantern light. They listened to bridges.
They watched flowers.
They followed stories. And when dawn finally arrived, they witnessed the breath of a dream, far above the clouds, far beyond ordinary maps.
In a place that most travelers would never believe existed.
The giants sleep still.
The kingdom endures still.
And somewhere beyond the horizon, drifting through endless skies, a few lantern-lit districts continue their slow journey through the morning light, until one distant day, perhaps centuries from now, the dream turns once more, and the kingdom gathers again beneath the stars.